Welcome back to another episode of Straight Facts here on the Football Terrace. I'm joined tonight by Chelsea fan media legend NiiNii is in the house from Blue Lions TV. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, man. I'm just blessed that now that I don't have COVID anymore. Like I thought I'd be one of those like lucky guys that would like live my entire life, like never catching COVID. Like when I was seeing tweets about like watch out, be careful. I was just like doing nothing literally to like jinx myself whatsoever. So yeah, I don't know how I got it. I think I got it watching Batman or something. So it's just been peak like all these past 10 days. So I'm just happy that I'm
good.
back and healthy now, man. Yeah.
Glad you're better. And not listen, Batman's a good film, so we're gonna, it's sitting there for those 3 hours though. No wonder.
Sorry about it. Yeah, it was worth it though. I'd have to say, like,
I hear you. Lots to delve into today, people. The Saudi media takeover bid, according to a number of media outlets, will be sanctioned and has been agreed to by the UK government. So should Chelsea accept, the UK government will not stand in the way of this bid. We're going to delve into that and look at some of the other stories coming out about Chelsea's takeover and the future of Chelsea. We're going to get NiiNii's take on that as a big Chelsea fan, big Chelsea influencer as well. We're going to touch on Thomas Tuchel and some of the players that may depart this summer from Chelsea in the future. We're also going to look at the Marcus Rashford agenda as well and the level of scrutiny that he's receiving across social media, and take a delve into the England squad that's been announced. No Tomori, no Sancho, and obviously no Marcus Rashford in there as well, but Maguire is included. So we're going to go through that in a little bit more detail. And any questions that you have, we want to hear from you. Todd here straight away says this has been a great Chelsea channel lately. Do you know, I always say this to people, we fluctuate with what club we focus. Whatever club's in the media, we focus on. You know, if Chelsea had no real news surrounding, I remember I went about 4 weeks buying match reactions without doing a single Chelsea video because everything was sunshine and rainbows. So, but yeah, it must have been a mad few weeks for you as a Chelsea fan.
Yeah, it's been it feels very surreal at this point in time to just like fully comprehend what's happening. It's just like going into a new year, literally being completely blind and clueless to what to expect. And you know, like reality is hitting us really hard right now. Of course, it's a very worrying time for Chelsea fans. Of course, like change is coming a lot sooner and quicker than any of us expected or realized would come. And you know, right now there's a lot of togetherness in the fan base, which is really, really nice to see. And like, you know, for me myself personally, I had a little bit of a little debacle on Twitter. Obviously, I hold my hands up, definitely take the L of some of my outrageous tweets that I put out. And you know, obviously it's nice to see the fan base really, you know, coming together, supporting each other. And it's been a while since I've seen something like this, so it's good.
Yeah, like I did see the kind of outrage from Chelsea fans towards you over like your sort of tweet about Roman, and you know, why is there almost like why is there so much sympathy for someone that's never really spoke to us and stuff like that. Was that just a case for you of maybe tweeting something, maybe not wording it right from what you actually meant?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, some people can know that maybe if I'm tweeting, maybe I can be a bit too more emotional, a bit too reactionary at times, or literally just whatever thought comes to my head in the moment, I'll just tweet it out, not even really thinking too much. So, on like a personal view, it definitely made me like wake up and think about what it means to like have a platform like this, responsibilities that come with it, all that type of stuff. But I guess like in a way, I was trying to say, I don't know. I'm quite fearful with everything. I guess with the change like happening so quickly and suddenly. You know, we've been used to a certain structure at this club, which has brought results, which has brought silverware, and you know, to think that we've got tons of owners, like over 27, consortiums and groups looking to bids to buy the club. And I mean, of course, all saying the right things that you want to hear, but yeah, the reality is, you know, we've been blessed to have an owner that didn't necessarily put profits before the success of the club. And now it seems like we'll be in a completely different type of management now by people that will also want to make their money on top of invest into the team. So, you know, I'm just hoping that we find the right owners. I hope that their intentions are good. And I hope that, they definitely mean what they say with all these like little PR statements that's like being flown out everywhere in the press right now. And I guess ultimately I just hope that, Roman for sure, trust that he will, him and Rain will find the right people to sell the club to, and hopefully just continue to maintain the momentum that we're building right now.
The thing about it as well, though, the whole point of financial sanctions taking away, the whole point is to generate reactions like yours. To be fair, it's to almost make people stop focused. It's almost you and I kind of read between the lines with yours in terms of I kind of felt I knew where you were coming from. I saw people outraged by it, but I sort of felt like I don't think NiiNii is angry really with Roman for what Roman's done for the club. It's more of a case of this situation has happened. We need Roman to do the right thing now and quickly. Let's just stop focusing on whether it's right or wrong for Roman and focus on the fact that we need him to hurry up quickly so that we don't get dragged. Something bad doesn't happen to the club. That's kind of how I read it between the lines. Me as a neutral looking at it. But I also, when you read it out loud and just say the words, I'm like, I got why for some Chelsea fans it maybe come across as a little bit disrespectful or ungrateful for what Roman had done for the club. And that's the problem with Twitter. Because I think if you said that on camera, they would have heard in the tone of your voice and how you're speaking. You know, sometimes you elaborate a little bit more. And Twitter is not always a great platform for expressing yourself. I've been caught out so many times.
It's very easy, you know. I feel like we're all conditioned to just literally tweet the first thing that comes in our minds. A lot of times, you know, no one's really spending too much time thinking about how to construct a tweet and you know what you're putting out there. But for me, I take it as like a humbling in that sense. It's only fair that a lot of people are justified with how they're feeling right now. And I mean, I get it. You know what I mean? I didn't take any of the abuse and stuff too personal. If you like invite that onto yourself, you kind of have to accept the consequences of that. And like I said, you know, this stuff breaks or makes you. So I'm definitely looking to get made by it. You know, acknowledge what was said and obviously just do better now, basically.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, mate. I do, and I know that the Chelsea Supporters Trust have been very, very sort of outspoken recently around, you know, the government resolving things quickly. There's talk about, you know, the next round of the Champions League, irrespective of who you get, making sure tickets are available. You know, trying to maintain the integrity of the sport and not punish the fans as much. But it does appear that you'll have bids ready to be accepted tomorrow evening, 9 p.m. I believe is the cutoff point. You obviously got the Saudi media bid, which, I mean, I've tried my best. As you say, it's hard. There's 27 different consortiums, investment companies, businesses, people trying to buy this club. So to keep up to date with exactly who each one is and who the two that stand out to me right now being the best, though, I feel like you've got Saudi Media Group, who, as we say, according to Football.London and a number of other sources, Boris Johnson and the government, and I say Boris Johnson, I just mean government, will sanction. And it's funny, really, because the word sanction, like, everyone looks at it as a negative word. And I'm like, you do realize sometimes sanctioning something also means agreeing to it. It's weird how the word sanction is now just literally attached to stopping things. But sanctioned and agreed to that they will allow that to go through because the government is happy there's no Saudi government involvement. And equally, with the deal that the UK is trying to do with Saudi Arabia over basically petrol and oil right now, there's no way they were going to like ban.
100%.
It's one of those where politics kind of help Chelsea in that regard right now, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Because I guess we got the government's position very, very quickly and early on now, and I guess with all the deals we're constantly doing, you know, we can't say no to Saudi money. So I think they're definitely very interesting. You know that they definitely have that financial, the resources to be able to back and support whatever. You know, of course, they're talking about redeveloping the stadium. They're saying all the right things of which they want to do with the money to help, you know, grow the brands, improve the club, and of course keep that momentum going as well. I'm interested by them. Of course, you know, for some fans, you know, I guess, you know, they have some justified criticism. They're thinking about some of the human rights like abuses in Saudi Arabia, and you know, some of them are feeling, you know, after the repercussions that we eventually faced with Roman, who's to say that, you know, some geopolitical issues between the UK and the Saudis will come in the future, and then they're looking to get sanctions. I mean, there's some of the things that I'm seeing on social media right now. But I think them and Todd Bowley, I feel like I'm liking the sound of the consortium that he's got, that he's building currently. I'm liking the plans he has for the club as well too. I like his background. I like the sporting strategy that he has definitely got a lot of success with his US franchises, and obviously I think that could definitely translate here as well too. So I think them two currently are the most exciting ones for me, and I think they definitely have the money and the resources and the knowledge as well to definitely you know, continue some of the good stuff that we did under Roman.
Yeah, what is interesting though, the Todd Bowley one is interesting. I learned today that Jonathan Goldstein is one of the heads of the consortium. He's actually a Spurs fan. So it's because Nick Candy's team have kind of come out because there was talk about Nick Candy's consortium together. And I think Nick Candy has essentially said, I don't want a consortium where one of the key decision makers is going to be a fan of another football club. But I also think that's positive because that shows you if Nick Candy has said that and he owns the club, it tells you he's putting the club first. He doesn't want anybody that isn't Chelsea through and through, proper Chelsea, as it were, like running the football club, which I think is going to be really, really key in relation to moving forward. And there's also the Athol Partners, a London-based investment firm who have put a £2 billion bid in. Yeah, they put 2 bid, but what they're willing to do is put forward an initial £50 million cash injection into Chelsea. Which I think, again, none of us really know the financial state of affairs at Chelsea, with Roman's loans no longer being pumped into the club, and he was putting about 30 million a year in. There's, of course, the loan money that will fall away with the reduction of players you can send out on loan each year coming into effect this summer. So maybe a cash injection of £50 million making up for those shortfalls. Again, they've got to look at all these different bits and pieces. And the asking price doesn't really seem to be that important because Roman can't make a profit from this anyway. So it doesn't matter if it's sold for £1 or £3 billion. As long as everything's kind of tied off at the end, it doesn't really matter. I'm not really focusing on the amount. But there's 2 or 3 firms that are really doing that. And I suppose it's just, if you end up with these consortiums, you just got to hope that you get an FSG and not a Hicks and Gillette, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think, perfectly said by you, to be honest. Ultimately, they want to see a return on their investment. I get worried about possible things like, ticket prices rising and stuff like that to meet demands and stuff like that. I mean, there's so much uncertainty that can come. So I definitely feel like even a 50 million injection from Athol, I don't know how far that would stretch us currently. I know that, of course, naturally, due to a lot of things like we were even saying before the stream, our business strategy probably have to change and evolve. We can't make the same money anymore from the loan army like we can because of all the new regulations coming into effect. That's just really minimizing the amount of, players you can loan out at a given time. So we definitely need to find the right business strategies outside of what happens on the pitch to move forward. But, 50 million injections, I don't know. I feel like whoever buys the club, they need to show their intent like this summer. And 50 mil is probably not going to be enough. Ideally, you want to show, okay, if you support Thomas Tuchel, for example, we're showing the fan base right now, here's the money. This is how much we believe in the brand of Chelsea. We have the money here, the finances, promote the ideas and philosophy that we do have. Tuchel, here's like 200 million to spend to, build your team. Ideally, they're the type of things that we're hoping to see. And I just personally feel, whoever signs and buys the club from Roman, you need to use this window in particular as your window of intent. You need to make a statement.
No, I agree, and I think they do. And if that will be when the red flags will go up from Chelsea fans. If you get someone that comes in whose plan and proposition looks brilliant, but you come to the summer and you start behaving like your Brentford, that isn't going to go down well. You want to see some statement signings. You want to see the intent for the club moving forward, and also then flex. And the one thing again that this could open up, it depends upon who is on these panels. Businesses they have connections to is what the new sponsorship deals look like. And that's where Newcastle are looking to make inroads, because you can't pump money into a club anymore like the original Roman did, like Sheikh Mansour did at the beginning, where you can pump in essentially as much cash as you want each year, spend it. So you have to raise your revenues. So it's going to be interesting to see the companies and the businesses that come on board to sponsor Chelsea. And I think that's one of the reasons why Chelsea Football Club and everybody involved in picking the successful bidders is also has to think about this from a reputational risk point of view, because whether Chelsea fans want to hear it or not, you're under the microscope right now for reputational risk. And ideally, they do not want to be bringing people on board who don't attract, as owners that won't attract the best sponsors or the right types of sponsors to make that, again, because you've got to make that shortfall of money up. I think what's also interesting about Saudi media, I was chatting to a friend of mine that's fairly well connected to Chelsea that said that the only other fear Chelsea have is that although on paper, Saudi media group is not connected to the Saudi government. If you know it, his words were, Chelsea are concerned that they'll still have influence, though, even though it isn't official influence. And we know that certain parts of the world, you can have influence over things even when you're not directly involved. And we see that in many different cases. And I think that that's the one thing you've got to look at. And he said to me in a watered down version, what Chelsea Football Club don't want to have, and fans have to be mindful of this, is the owner of another club in the Premier League being able to influence the owners of your club, you know. And of course, I suppose I understand it from that point of view. You just want to make sure that if Saudi Media Group come in, that at all times they get to put Chelsea's best interests first in what they do, and there isn't no outside influence, even if it's just leaning on somebody, you know. But I suppose that's the problem. We get into this world now where everyone that's starting to own football clubs is so politically exposed in one way or another. There doesn't need to be any official connection, because we all know these billionaires drinking the same in the same bars, in the same casinos,
WhatsApp groups.
Exactly, 100%. So it's just making sure you put the right people in. And in terms of the future of Chelsea, like, where's your head at with that? Because I see, again, rivals. So we've had a Gal on the show as a prime example. You're never going to be the same again. Chelsea are dead as we know it. You know, you could end up getting points deductions, going out of business, right through to other rivals who are like, I think you're going to be okay. With a lot of Chelsea fans on the terrace that are like, I don't think we're actually going to notice a difference once it's all settled down. Like, where are you and obviously your channel, Blue Lions TV? What's the consensus been like over there?
I think it's just been a mixture of everything, to be honest. But in terms of my personal opinion, I of course, you're slightly apprehensive, but I can't say that I'm necessarily fearful. I think I'd be more fearful, for example, if, let's say, you know, in a reality where Roma wanted to, like, obviously fight the case, you know, take it to court, long everything out, and then there may be claims of, like, you know, possibly, you know, getting affected financially. Yeah, that becomes sort of a stronger talking point. But I think right now, due to just the haste in which everything is really picking up a lot of speed in terms of getting the sale moved on and stuff, I feel like we shouldn't really suffer too many side effects from that. It does feel like hopefully by next month, you know, we could know exactly who these new owners are going to be when it comes to buying the club too. And you know, considering we have a lot of very important assets, you know, Cobham, we've got a lot of fantastic young players out there on loan that can save us a lot of money from having to dip into the markets to fund positions that we don't have to, because we've already got these players here already. You know, exciting things to come, the loan army as well too, and you know, but our season is still going on. Yeah, the players are still unaffected by everything that's happening. They're still looking to play for themselves and the fans right now. And you know, you'd imagine that there's a possibility that there's more silver to come coming into the season. So I do feel like, you know, we could go into this summer window with some excitement, knowing that potentially there's going to be money invested for us to really spend in the market, and hopefully give Tuchel the ability to have like a full squad in his image right now, because we haven't really had a manager who's had that luxury since Mourinho in his first term. And I think that's one of the final details that we need to solve to really have like a proper title challenge for next season.
Yeah, I mean, the loan army is interesting to me, because obviously you've got Broja he looks so good this year for me at Southampton, and I think raw still, but very talented.
Yeah.
Conor Gallagher called up into the England squad today, right? Did I read that right?
Yeah. Conor Gallagher, Mark Gurley called up. Great to see. Yeah, amazing.
You've got all those guys to come back, and I think that one of the things on the Roman, which I've always fluctuated between praising and condemning, is sometimes the patience with certain players, and I mean the young players that come through. Mounts and the Reece Jameses, for me, were absolutely supported by the transfer ban. The transfer ban gave an opportunity for them to get in and have a season of football. And for them to kind of establish themselves within the squad and prove how good they are. Would that have ever happened if the transfer ban didn't happen? And you went for a different manager other than Lampard? Because maybe. And a lot of Chelsea fans will say, yeah, 100% Terry, it would have happened. But we don't know. You know, the problem Chelsea managers have always had is you have to win now, otherwise you lose your job. Yeah. And that's been Roman's way, and it's yielded the most successful period in your club's history. So I don't think you can overly criticize it. But this is the positive angle I look at from a Chelsea fan. You may now get owners that are more interested in building a Klopp-Pep style sort of dynasty where, you know what, we know that Conor Gallagher is 2 years away from being at his absolute optimum best, but we're going to stick with him to get there rather than dropping £80 million on a player and kind of upsetting the apple cart. Because I think sometimes with Roman, I feel like if you'd have kept Carlo Ancelotti when you got rid of him, you'd have won more Premier Leagues. I think the first time around with Jose, if you'd have kept him happy, like
no, I agree.
3 occasions, and it's not to attack Roman, because even the best run clubs make mistakes. This is where I look at it like, you could have 2 or 3 of these brilliantly talented youngsters come through, spend a little more in the transfer market. The likes of Havertz, who's looking brilliant right now, start to develop and come through. And all these rivals praying and begging for your downfall. I'm just trying to get this feeling that actually it could go the complete opposite way. You could build something even stronger than what we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years.
I think possibly, and I guess that's the hope that I'm holding out for. I think we have all the infrastructure in place right now to be able to create a reality like that. And listen, I think what you said on Roman was fair. I'm not going to be sitting here saying the guy was crap, this, that. Absolutely not. A lot of positives for the club, but we all know that. We've all witnessed that, and we've all seen the silverware with our own 2 eyes. But, you know, I did feel like the only thing that was stopping us was that we could have possibly been a bit more sustainable with how we approach things. Sometimes I look at some of the managers we sacked. You look at guys like, for example, Ancelotti. You know, when you get forced Fernando Torres on your hands, which maybe you didn't necessarily plan for, doesn't really suit the system or really complement things currently, that's going to affect how you can prepare the team and what you're going to do. There's been many examples of maybe Roman having like some personal influence at times when it comes to recommending transfers that he wants to see. I remember like Shevchenko when he was first signed, competing alongside Drogba, and it didn't really work out for us in the end. And there have been some examples like that. And I don't know, I felt like if we had like a cool sporting philosophy and strategy at the top since like the day he came, we could maybe mitigate a lot of these issues where, you know, like some of our success in the market hasn't really been consistent. You know, I bring up this example. You look at a Man City, when they're spending over 50 million a player, that's a guaranteed success player that instantly has an impact of improving the team in one area. Us, on the other hand, you look at some of our top 10 record signings, most of them have been duds and haven't come close to justifying the fees. And you're currently looking at someone like Romelu Lukaku, most expensive player of 100 million, or like 350k a week as well too. And then you're spending all that money making all these big statements for a guy that, you know, the system doesn't even really complement and support anyway. So, you know, to spend this money consistently on players that don't really work at the club at times, I don't necessarily see the long-term benefit from that. And I think if we can improve in just like certain areas like this, because we were amazing under Roman, but we're not perfect. And my thing is, your competition, when your competition is like Liverpool and Man City, you know, those smaller, finer details become even more important, because if you want any hopes of winning something, you have to be better than these teams every season, which they make very, very hard to do because they're, you know, they're pretty like perfect teams in their own right. So, you know, there's definitely an opportunity for us to be able to improve upon what's been left and maybe take things to a different level. And let's hope, you know, we get the right owners that can obviously do that.
I agree. And I think that this is where football's also evolved in recent times, and all managers have always had systems and formations. But I always felt in the early Roman era, if you go from sort of 2003 to about 2012, 2013, there was a lot more freedom in a way managers and their teams approach games to have a free roaming player, you know, a little bit more of a rogue in your team. The bigger and better teams now are very system orientated, which is why when you get fullbacks missing, or you get one key player missing, the teams are nowhere near as good. You know, in Jose's peak era, when Wenger was at his best, when Fergie were at their best, they still won titles and championships and everything else with players missing because the football was played in a slightly different way. So I sometimes look at Chelsea's approach, where maybe they can streamline this, is promoting Broja would have been a better option both financially and maybe for the team than bringing in Lukaku. But we had this propensity as fans to go, well, you only back a manager by spending money. And we see this at Man United. Oh, you're backed. So you spent £1.6 billion on players in 9 years. But you're not backing the manager if you give him 3 or 4 players that his system doesn't need. And you're just spending for spending's sake. You actually create a problem more than solving things. And I think that's where, if I'm a Chelsea fan right now, that's the direction I would want to go down, because it is going to be, and I've said it before, it's going to be a different world without Roman, but it doesn't necessarily mean worse.
And to touch upon even what you're saying too, I think that explains one of the reasons behind why the management's always been very ruthless, because I think once there's like any inkling that Champions League football could be affected and we're not going to enter the tournament for next season, managers will get sacked very quickly, and then we'll bring in someone else to come in and kind of just ride off their success and their ideas in that sense. And that possibly be seen as like an admission of failure on one hand, where, you know, there's been a few examples of times that we've tried to, you know, create like a new strategy that never really works. I think for me, probably like the biggest L we've ever really taken was probably like Villas-Boas. You know, you signed a Porto manager at the time, 31, one of the most exciting guys in Europe, cost you like over 50 million to sign him. And when he sacked for over like 30 million. And, you know, why? Because, you know, you've given him a team with a lot of older players that aren't going to play with that can't play in a high line, that don't impress from the front, you know. So you've just kind of wasted tens of millions. And the thing with that is that then you're financially impacted for the years to come, because you need to balance the books, you need to amortize all these costs, and that can affect maybe what you can do in future windows. And I think this is where the issue we've always had, where throughout a decade, a few years we spent, and then like in between those seasons, there's seasons of like a lot of indifference, because we can't really match our ambitions in the market, because we're still paying the price for a cost that wasn't really seen ahead in the first place. And I don't know, obviously I appreciate everything the boards have done as well, even though we're talking about maybe, you know, things, of course, everything could be better, everything could be improved and worked upon. I guess maybe at times, Roman, for me, you know, I had a habit of like giving ownership of the club to people that he's had like previous working relationships with, like someone like Marina at the time. I don't necessarily think she had, no, she's really developed now to be one of the best, of course, directors in Europe. But beforehand, it took her like a while to get there. You know, we have like some interesting figures like your Scott McCacken's at the top, who seem to have some influence in making signings and recommending players, and most of them end up being duds, have, you know, kind of set us back and don't really do anything for us. So, you know, if we can improve those type of like small mistakes with how we run things at the club, then I think, you know, times could be even more exciting, to be honest. And I think starting with like using your Brogers, your Gallaghers, you know, actual, you know, the talent that costs you nothing, that definitely have the ability to be able to be like match winners and first team players for you in the future. Use them now, integrate them now, and reap the rewards in the you know, in the not too distant future.
110%, mate. In terms of the future, Tuchel leaving Chelsea keeps coming up. I mean, you must be seeing this lots as a Chelsea fan, a content creator. Every other day, I'm seeing headlines from either opinion pieces from people like Jamie Carragher or like transfer type stories. And Tuchel said on Sunday that I can guarantee I'll be here till the end of the season. And people are obviously reading into that. What does he mean? Why is that only the end of the season? Why not? I'll be here for the rest of my contract. And I'm seeing people go, maybe the new owners won't want him. There are some people suggesting that maybe he's not been happy with Chelsea's handling of this situation and will leave because of it. I'll give you my opinion in a minute, but in terms of yourself and as a Chelsea fan, do you see any possibility with Thomas Tuchel not being your manager at the start of next season?
I mean, to be honest, I find that like a bit far-fetched at this point in time. I'm just trying to think what are like actual scenarios in which Tuchel could leave. Would it be like maybe he decides by himself that he wants a different environment, maybe the club structure isn't really for him? But there's, you know, before this whole like turmoil right now, I mean, there was no reports of any issues with the ball whatsoever. Instead, there's like a great like unity and great understanding between everyone. So, you know, considering too on like the footballing aspects that, you know, he's very close to having a squad built in his whole image. You know, he's brought a new style of football. The players are better accustomed to playing in it right now. To leave all of that, to then go somewhere where you have to start, you know, from like, you know, level zero, it doesn't really make too much sense for me. So I do feel like a lot of it maybe is just that reactionary conversation and like hypothetical talk, but I don't think there's much reality of Tuchel leaving the club at all, to be honest.
I agree. It's a mad one for me. Like I keep seeing, I feel like journalists on this one, Man United are probably, there'll be an element of truth to Man United wanting him. So I think what you'll see is when all this went off, and this is right by Man United, there was probably a knocking on the door of the agent saying, if it all goes a little bit peak-tong, would Tuchel be interested? Like, and I would expect Man United and any team that's in the market for a new manager to just put out the feeler and say,
100%.
Could there be a possibility of him leaving? So I think the connection to Man United has stemmed from something fairly normal and trivial. The rest of it for me is just using Man United, again, the biggest driver of football clicks in the world, to like generate a story around this. I think Tuchel's played it right. I think he's not going to commit to be on. I think he's just, him and Petr Cech have done a great job recently of just playing it all down. We take it day by day. Everybody relax. I'm going to be here till the end of the season. Let's just wait and see how the land lies and we move from there. Because if Tuchel does make bigger promises, if Petr Cech makes bigger promises and something did go wrong, it's on them, isn't it? And they've put themselves in the firing line. They're just being very careful with their words.
Of course.
But as long as there's a new owner and Tuchel is wanted, the only way I see him leaving, honestly, is if the new owner didn't want him. That literally
exactly.
is the only way. And
like if they don't have if their sporting philosophies don't match and stuff like that, that's the only thing I could see. But to be honest, if you're a new owner coming in, the last thing you want to do is have the lack the support from the fans by doing something ridiculous like getting rid of Thomas Tuchel for any reason. You'd imagine that you would do anything to make him happy to keep him.
Exactly, and it isn't like, look, if Pep Guardiola was out of a job right now and you got rid of Tuchel and brought in Pep, it would win the fans back over. If you got rid of Tuchel and got in Klopp, it probably wouldn't back up. You've got rid of a great manager, another great one's coming in. But who is there in the world that they could get? You've got Ten Hag and Poch. They're not on Tuchel's level yet, or maybe never will be. It's like it doesn't make any footballing sense. And I think Carragher's kind of pushing this a few times, and other people are pushing it. And I'll just read it, and I'm like, I cannot see the mileage in it. Of course, there is always a possibility, but I think it is so. I think there's more chance of Chelsea going out of business than Thomas in this summer. Like, I legitimately believe that. So one of those stories where I would say to Chelsea fans, scroll on. You know, ironically, obviously we've got it in our title. Don't scroll on from YouTubers talking about it, because it's what I say to a lot of Chelsea fans. Often you see what we're talking about, the subject matter, but you need to listen to what we say. We're not pushing this notion that it could happen. I saw one article that said Man United are making deep inquiries and may change direction for Tuchel. We need to be announcing our manager now during the international break, not waiting into the summer to see whether the new owners of Chelsea want Tuchel or not. Like, the planning from us, even if we went after Tuchel properly. The only way it makes sense to go after Tuchel is if Tuchel turns around today to Man United and says, I'm leaving no matter what. And he hasn't done that. It's just, honestly, the whole story is madness. It's an absolute... HMS, is Terry getting excited by Manchester Evening News reporting? No, I'm not excited because I think it's nonsense, bruv. You obviously didn't listen to what I just said, brother. Nice try, though. Nice try. We've got some super chats here. First one from Moose. It says, as long as they are not connected to the Saudi government, I'm a Chelsea fan, but human rights fan too, is what Moose Wizard has got to say. Jem here, one of our members, says, no, Terry, NiiNii was questioning why people were so heartfelt for Roman because he feels some of the decisions made in the past were not good. Made it sound like he was happy for Roman to leave.
Definitely wasn't that wasn't the energy I was coming at with the tweet at all. To be honest, like I said, it was just more frustration in the moment. Just thinking, all this stress, all this turmoil, for a guy that I've not even heard his voice once. You know what I mean? It wasn't anything too deep. I mean, of course, we've discussed our opinions of Roman. No one's like 100% perfect, where you can't talk about one or two criticisms, but I'm not going to sit here and act like and diminish and dismiss everything that Roman's done. You know what I mean? That'd be stupid.
It's funny. I saw more people angry with your tweet about him than maybe some of the things that Roman's done involved in a conflict between two nations. I thought, like, that's the irony in that is that's the epitome of sports washing. The idea, one of the ideas behind sports washing is to get people that have done bad things to be loved by people because they've given them success at their clubs. And look, I've said all along in this whole circumstance, I'm not making any accusations towards Roman. I've read some stuff in the Times in the last few days about things that he's connected to and things that he's done and things that him and a lot of the oligarchs have been supportive with.
Yeah.
But I'm not educated enough on it to turn around and be like, he did or he didn't do it. My advice all week to Chelsea fans has been, you just want to sit on the right side of history here. You don't want to be, especially as Twitter now is basically like a digital permanent CV for yourself. You don't want to be like overtly supporting someone and then some terrible news about something terribly been involved with comes out. I would say keep your powder very dry. Thanks for what you've done at the club, but I understand why you've had to sell. That would be my approach to Chelsea fan, because I wouldn't want to get caught out by it personally.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very fair statement. To be honest, of course, I mean, we can probably Google a lot of stories that's come out surrounding Roman, especially during these times too, as well. That doesn't really take away anything that he's done for the club and the success we've had under him. But I just think having that perspective as well too, you know, not me personally, I respect and I definitely appreciate, but then it will kind of just be, it will stay at that level. It's not going to become anything more than that, in my opinion.
Yeah. I hear you. Dexter here says we're used to people turning away from Tottenham to join us. William, he saw the light. Candy's comments about gold.
Yeah, I agree.
Points going.
Yeah, I think so. I feel like, again, they're all saying the right PR statements. I don't necessarily understand. I mean, regardless if he's a Spurs fan, you think a guy at this level is going to jeopardize his money and his investments to try and infiltrate the club at the top and try and ruin us? I mean, come on. That happens in the movies. That's fantasy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That means nothing to me about who they support. It's about, you know, what ideas are you coming with? That's the most important thing.
Yeah, Nav here says they have 1.3 trillion in total with backing or something like that. So the fund, the group fund, I believe, has a valuation of 1.3 trillion. But people have got to understand, again, layman's terms here, but like Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world, but it's not cash. So much of his wealth is connected to the value of Amazon. So if Amazon suddenly become worth nothing tomorrow, Bezos would still probably be a billionaire, but he wouldn't be, but he would lose tens of billions of pounds, if that makes sense. Like it's, so that 1.3 trillion isn't cash that they can just pump into Chelsea.
Yeah.
But as Nick Candy says, if they don't get it, as long as it's in the right hands, it wouldn't make sense for Boris to turn around and say you can't have it when you're doing a deal with them. Yeah, look, I felt all along that there was no way Boris was going to turn down the Saudi media group. What I've said, and I think people have ignored a few articles that have said that it's more Chelsea considering whether they want to do it or not, rather than the government looking to step in. Arjan says, I'm not sure if you've talked about it, but except Nazir Kinsella, none of the tier 1 journalists are talking about the Saudi media group. Is the bid real?
It seems like it's concrete. It seems like there's some reality behind it. Yeah, it's very interesting. Of course, seeing like what some of their plans are, knowing that the owner of the group, who's like a Chelsea fan, that's you know, been to many games throughout the years too. I'd imagine though, you know, the complexity of a deal like this, you're not gonna like reveal everything to the press. You know, it's gonna be discreet. It's going to be behind closed doors. That's how negotiations are going to go on. But I mean, they definitely have the resources to be able to back any ambitions they have, to be honest.
I agree, and I think it's real. But also, a lot of the journalists, UK based, I've seen a lot of them over the past do a lot of articles about Saudi. There's almost this element of, I think they're ignoring it. I think there's an element of, I want to focus on the UK and American conglomerates and billionaires are buying it. I don't want to be connected to that story. That's the sense I get from it, to be fair, but I think it's definitely real. Gotti Riaz says NiiNii on straight facts. Yes, he is. He's the real guy. Forget American owners. Don't trust them. United fans, Arsenal fans, Liverpool fans have seen that. They don't want to know football culture, so it's a massive no. Again, I don't think it works with these consortiums if you've got people like Nick Candy. And one of the things about Saudi Media Group, you've got lifelong Chelsea fans at the helm. I think you need that. You know, the one thing about the Glazers, the Cronkies, and FSG, as far as I'm aware, none of them grew up loving football and being fans of those clubs. It's very different there. So yeah, I think that's definitely a concern. One of the questions that someone posed into us earlier, mate, they wanted your opinion, NiiNii, on the future of Lukaku.
Okay.
Future of Lukaku at Chelsea. What are you saying about him?
Oh, I think Lukaku is a very sticky situation. In the summer, when we were all, as a fan base, seeing the reports collectively, I was kind of thinking, okay, if we're signing him, is that like the clearest sign that we're looking to maybe like evolve the system a tiny bit to, of course, get the best out of him? Because it's just like, I feel like the game is so specialized right now that, you know, you know exactly what you're buying into. So we know what Lukaku's strengths are, what he can't do. So to see him maybe being used in a way that doesn't necessarily always get the best out of his skill set, it has been a bit puzzling considering that, you know, we were using a false nine system beforehand, and you know, we could have just maybe given more game time for Kai to be able to grow even more in this role and support like an attack and a front three that suits what we're trying to do in this current system under Tuchel. So I don't know. I think Lukaku is a very interesting one, and I can't imagine most clubs being able to afford to buy him back at all, not with the wages too. I mean, you know, there are some Italian reports saying that Lukaku is very happy to take like a drastic wage reduction to be able to leave, but then, you know, it feels very easy right now to be able to look for stories suggesting that Lukaku wants to leave, and there's nothing really concrete suggesting anything like that. You know, potentially, I feel like he could have a future if we were to do business to sign the right players in the summer. Because I mean, you know, our system it is great. It's very competitive. It allows us to do the things we're doing now. But I don't think it's perfect in that sense. It definitely can be improved on, and I think with the right players signed to help with that, potentially maybe we can adapt certain things we do, make other tweaks to get the best out of them. Because I don't know, I feel ultimately like if you're spending money like that on a Lukaku, like surely the plan is for him to be the leading goal scorer in a season, getting over like 25, 30 goals a season. You need to kind of justify the cost and the money. But in this system, I don't really see any player getting past 25 goals a season with how we play. So it kind of makes the sign even more like, I don't know, it kind of reduces the need for the signing. You know, I feel like it's a case of diminishing returns, and it's just kind of creating a situation right now where, you know, Lukaku's valuation is dropping. I think his confidence is definitely down as well too. Things aren't going right at this point in time. And we've seen the form of Havertz and others too. How easy is it going to be for Lukaku to just get himself back in the team? And I don't know, I find it so weird because I'm always thinking, and I say this in my channel, like theoretically, like Lukaku, Havertz, the two most expensive signings in our history. On paper, it feels like they should be able to play, like their skill sets should complement. And it's been interesting that we haven't really seen them really play up front together as much. But that's the thing, like if we're not even seeing things like that done for Lukaku, it's really got me thinking, what does the future really hold for the player? And I'd be curious to know what happens in the summer, because I feel like if Lukaku was to decide, you know, ideally, you know, I do want to go, because I even saw today in Italy, they're talking about maybe he could potentially drop his agent Pastorello, who played like a big part in persuading him to come back to Chelsea to sign for us in the summer and stuff like that. Big influence as well too. And we've seen that when Lukaku was unhappy, we saw how he dropped Mino Raiola to sign with Rock Nation before moving on to Pastorello. So, I mean, who knows? Who knows? Could that be like a little hint that maybe Lukaku is keeping his options open in the summer? We'll have to find out, but I would be a bit disappointed if he was to go. I feel like even though we haven't seen that consistent quality from him at times, there's still been glimpses, like enough glimpses this season to feel like maybe next season coming back with maybe some new ideas, him coming back fully fresh after a pre-season as well too, we could get something out from the player, and the player could still be a success here. But I think with things currently, it's looking a bit sticky, to be honest.
Yeah, look, I feel like he's already mentally checked out, if I'm being honest. He is a deadly finisher, and in the right system, as we saw at Inter, as we saw at West Brom, and we see for Belgium, you know, he is deadly. I just feel like the way Tuchel plays football, he just isn't suited to it. He isn't a good enough technical football player. And I think there is a fundamental difference between being a very good goal scorer and being proficient enough as a football player. And Kai Havertz will probably never be as deadly as him in front of goal, but it's everything else he brings to the game. Right now in your system, a younger Olivier Giroud would be a better fit than Lukaku to gel everybody around him together.
But I find that interesting though, because like even when Tuchel was using Giroud last season, I think he only scored, I think, is it 2 goals or 1 goal under Tuchel last season, that goal against Atleti away from home. Like with how we use our false nine, they're not necessarily like the icing on the cake in the sense that they're the guy that gets on the end of these C moves to put the ball in the back of the net. That's what Lukaku is. That's the type of focal striker he is. So in a sense, like you're saying, it's correct. You know, he's not that technically proficient where he can kind of play as like a cam / striker, dropping into holes and areas to like link up the play and provide service to put people into better positions when Lukaku wants to be in those positions to score. And that's what I mean by the glimpses. We've seen that against like your Middlesbroughs and other teams as well, where when Lukaku gets that right service at the right time, he doesn't need 10 shots on goal, 5 shots on goal to get a goal. You know, he's quite clinical with the opportunities he does get. So
yeah, and I think as well, the crazy thing is he was able to link play up very well in Italy. I think what people forget is that the Premier League is just faster. And it's just the tempo of the play is quicker here than in Italy. Yeah. And I think that's what Lukaku struggles with. In a slightly slower league where the tempo of the game is slower, he's fine. The Premier League's just too quick for him to play that role to the best of his abilities, because so far the three times, twice at Chelsea and at Man United, that he's been asked to lead the line for one of the leading clubs where most teams sit deep against you. So they sit deep and they press you quickly when you get in and around that final third of the pitch. He's struggled. And I think that Chelsea do need to look beyond him. It is just that loss, though. It's that loss of, you bought him in for nearly £100 million, and you're probably going to be lucky to get 60 to 70 million for him this time round. But maybe new ownership is worth it. Maybe the new ownership looks in and go, look, well, we'll write that off because we've just come in. It might be a little bit easier now to get rid of him. The only thing is, the longer you hold on for him, the likelihood of him increasing in value is going to diminish anyway. So you have to sometimes look at it and say, take the loss early rather than leaving it a bit longer. And then it may not be a case of reinvesting the money in anybody else. It might be let's take let's look at the Conor Gallaghers and the Broyers and say, you're going to get that berth, and we're going to invest some money kind of elsewhere in many ways. So I look at Lukaku, very good finisher. I just don't think he's right for Chelsea and Tuchel's system. And I think he's kind of alluded to that himself with the whole, well, I basically want to play this way. But Tuchel decided on something different. And in this new era that you're moving into, maybe the manager's wants match the club's wants, even more so than they did under Roman. And that full support for the manager. And that's going to be key moving forward. If you're not going to spend in the Roman era, sticking to the managers and the club's philosophy consistently is going to be far more important than before.
For sure. And I guess for me, it just really adds to that further frustration of, what is like the critical game plan in the end, where, again, like another record signing is not having the impact everyone's hoping for. Like I said, if you're spending money on a striker like this, you're hoping at least minimum 25 goals in a season, because you spend 100 mil for guaranteed type of success. So the fact that last season, for example, when Tammy was out the team, it was because he's more of like a traditional number 9. And we kind of, got by without him. So this is, again, like I said, the fact that we went back to signing a traditional 9 in like Lukaku, and then really having no real tactical way to use him and get the best out of his skill set, it has definitely confused me, because, I do think Lukaku is a world-class striker. I think he's a world-class player 100% if he's used properly. And I think ultimately with strikers are like the finishing, like complementary thing in your team. You know what I mean? They need to suit the style in which you play in. And if there's a contradiction, you're going to have issues like this. And it's just really annoying, because, if we were hoping to have a striker that was going to be the finishing piece to just take us to a different level. But I don't know. I think after seeing everything this season, I guess my current take is that with the system, because it's more team focused, I accept the fact that maybe necessarily we're not going to see anyone get 30 goals in a season, but we're going to get more wins because we're going to be more united and more clinical as a team. And those goals are going to be distributed evenly throughout the team, like with the wing backs, the forwards, you know what I mean? Why do you have to spend big on a striker to get you 30 goals a season when you're never, ever going to set him up to be able to get those goals to begin with?
Well, and look, when you're winning titles, there's years where United were winning things, and we didn't have one player. So 1999 is a prime example. There wasn't one individual player. Well, Beckham got a lot of individual awards that year, and I think came second in the Ballon d'Or. But there wasn't one player that led the way. Everybody played a part. Cole, York, Giggs, Beckham, Scholes, Sheringham, Solskjaer. They all chipped in and did their thing. And Man City are often a little bit like that, where it comes from everywhere rather than being isolated to one or two people. And that kind of system generally can withstand an injury or two more, because you can't imagine that if Mo Salah got injured for 6 months, Liverpool would win anything. At the moment, because he scores the lion's share of their goals the majority of the time. Liverpool really want to get to a point where Mo Salah's still scoring like that, but everybody else is kind of chipping in and everything else as well. It's very, very important. We have some more super chats here. First one says from Red and White and Come On You Blues, says since Pulisic has as many goals as Hazard in the Champions League, and apologies, my TV came on by itself, in the Champions League and has tied since Drogba. NiiNii, do you now accept he is better than Bailey and I can't even pronounce the other name?
Thauvin, the French guy. I mean, the question, that's a bit of an odd one for me. Leon Bailey and Tovan, I don't remember saying anything about them unless like I said something in a video like what 3-4 years ago that I can't remember. If so, yeah, apologies, I guess. But I mean, like I said, I've I'm someone where I always say this all the time. Of course, I'll have my criticisms. I don't get into the realm of hating on players. I'm just too old to be doing that type of stuff. Like growing up, I used to do that when I was younger, but you know more, you know better as you get older. And listen, I had some concerns of Pulisic when we first signed. At the time, we didn't know if Hazard was still destined to stay. We had Hudson in the situation where he could have gone to Bayern and his contract wasn't sorted. And I was just thinking, signing someone like a Pulisic right now, is this like necessarily the best move, considering that even though he is an exciting player, I'll be necessarily seeing that consistency that's made him worth 60 mil. But of course, my opinion has definitely changed. And a lot of that has come down to how Pulisic has like applied himself since playing for us. Like before, he used to really struggle when it came to pressing from the front, doing any defensive work rate. He'd be bouncing off players for fun, basically. But I think that's been one of the biggest improvements in this game. His willingness to run, his willingness to fight. And actually, I've been a big supporter of him this season. I've really wanted to see him play a lot more because the Werner experiment failed from last season. And for me, I always felt like Pulisic was like that successor to Timo, where this guy knows how to time his runs inside the books. Like we saw Lampard use Pulisic in a way that I didn't know he could even be used, because he was just like a traditional winger at Dortmund. But this is a guy that's playing like an inside forward, and he's showing double-digit goals he got under Lampard. That he has big potential in this area, and I thought it's been a bit of a frustration that we haven't really tapped into that side of his game. A lot of times in the Tuchel, he's played more as like a wing back and or opposite side of the flanks, for example, compared to playing his best position. We're now seeing Tuchel do that more. That's why Puli's got 3 goals in 6 games now. And when you use him in his best position, as we've seen for a few players now this season, you see an improvement in their performance and in their productivity. And now with Pulisic, especially if you get some American owners, you'd imagine that they want this guy to hopefully potentially be the face of the club or a star name that could have an incredible marketing opportunities back in America too. And I definitely think that Pulisic has really made a lot of good improvements in his overall game now. And now I think all he really needs is that position to be able to play in consistently, which is his best one on the left-hand side. Just kind of let him just develop and grow now.
Do his thing. Look, most of the time I see people criticize Pulisic, it's only ever been about his injuries as opposed to him as a footballer. And the injuries are an issue because he never gets a long enough run of games to really click, because he's out again. I think that's the biggest concern I tend to see. They should have a demand for whoever buys Chelsea to get Haaland at the club. It is a must. Maybe the owner could lower the price for this to happen. They can't though, bro, because the new owners can only pump around £90 million over a 3-year period into the club. So even if they bought the club for £1, they can't pump £1 billion cash into the football club. FFP essentially stops that, and I'm watering it down to a very simplistic element, but you can only pump around £90 million every 3 years into the club. You can overspend as long as by the end of a 3 to 4 year period, you're not making a loss by a certain amount. And I don't remember the figure. I think it's about £35 million. But then Chelsea would have to almost know they're going to increase their income to a certain point and lower the spending further along the lines. They just have to be very, very careful that they don't overspend and cause themselves problems with FFP, because I still feel like UEFA is really looking to get somebody with that at some point. Marcus Rashford. I want to ask you about Rashi, not in the England squad today, and I think we all knew that was going to be the case. He doesn't deserve to be in the England squad. His form is awful. We've seen him snap at the fans the other day, appearing to swear at them and try to square up to some, just absolutely losing his mind. And I think, look, everyone's got a difference of opinion on him. Some say he's never been good enough. Some say he was and he's drifted and whatever else. But when you look at him right now, what is your take on him? Is it time out of football altogether, on the sidelines, take an extended break? Is it something he just needs to, do you need to get off social media and get away from what he's focused on outside of the game? Because he doesn't look like the player that we all saw a year ago and beyond that. He looks absolutely rotten right now.
Yeah, I think, one of the negative side effects about social media today is that, a lot of these attacks are a lot more personal, and, it's very easy to carry the abuse over multiple days as well too. Maybe back in the day, of course, fans have always been criticizing players. That's never been something new. But I guess it was maybe easier to separate that more because you're only really witnessing that like when you're in the stadium or like the odd newspaper article or something. But now when you can just literally be targeted at it straight away, and you know, people frustrated after a game because you know, I don't know what it is about football, but it has this emotional effect on all of us where it's just like it can really just ruin our moods, ruin our week, ruin our day. And with social media now, there's an outlet now to literally direct all your source of frustration. You know, you saw a player that, you know, was dead on the pitch today, had a bad game. Find us that straight away, say what you want, and feel better about it and move on with your day. And I think it's quite hard for players now in today's world to be able to find that balance between needing to have an active social media platform and then being able to know when to just like stay away from it and focus on yourself. Yeah, maybe Rashford, I think, yeah, clearly, I don't know what's happening in his personal life, but of course, the pressure. Of course, naturally, someone like him, if you're playing for United at this level, you're going to be angry at yourself for the performance you're putting in too. You know, we always think these players don't care. I mean, you do care. You do care. But at the same time, I also feel like some of it, yeah, is a little bit misguided because I saw that game that United played against Atletico Madrid second leg, and I just had to say, like, for me, it was just like the biggest like wake up call of, you know, desperate changes needed because when you play against Atletico Madrid, you can't play like how your Man United were playing. Like, there was no control throughout the entire game. The midfield did not control the game. You know, I'm looking at the passing moves, the passing patterns, and not actually the non-existent passing moves and passing patterns where literally it was like players are literally improvising attacks on the fly as they're playing because there's no structure for them to fall onto to be able to get the best out of their game. And I felt that's why all the wide men look quite bad because it's very easy to get isolated, outmanned, and then you know you're in like less effective areas of the fields where it's very hard for you to really influence the game like that. I think it's a lot deeper than that. And you know, like for us, when you play against Atletico Madrid, you have to control the game. You have to keep possession of the ball. United, every like 2-3 passes, they were forcing the play, forcing a move, forcing a switch ball, and it was very panicky. And there was a lot of fear behind how they were playing because it's like, well, the players don't really understand, you know, how do we break teams down as a team, you know? And I think it's very easy to blame players who aren't performing, but then at this level, with how the game is today, you know, if you don't have that type of structure behind you when you're playing, anyone will look bad and anyone will look worse than what they actually are. And I think it's more signs of all the mismanagement that took from Man United, in my opinion. You know, like as you're saying, you still don't know what manager is going to come in to take over things, where the direction is going to go. Even when Solskjaer was sacked too, it's kind of like like inevitable, like spur of the moment type of thing. There was no strategy. Like, okay, like when Lampard went, you'd imagine one of the reasons why is because the club knew Tuchel's here and we can get him straight away. This is why we're gonna, you know, do something that was gonna, of course, have a bit of backlash, but in the long term, it's gonna work out and it's gonna be fine. But it's not like that at Man United, and I just feel like, you know, sometimes people have to see where the root issues and causes come from. And I think sometimes players can be kind of scapegoats in these moments because you're essentially set up to fail to begin with, really. Because I look at a lot of United players, I don't really see what many of them are supposed to be doing or can do. I don't see what Ragnick's done in terms of philosophy or coaching. I thought the Atleti game was proof to me that he doesn't know what he's doing right now in terms of finding anything to improve Man United. And you know, like when I'm seeing like a midfield of like McTominay and Fred starting, now you want Matic and Pogba there because they can keep possession of the ball, they can play between the lines, play in front of Atleti, force them back, shift their blocks left to right. That's how you do it. And that's what big teams do in tournaments like this. And the way United played was not this big teams don't play like that. And I don't think it's just the players' fault. It's the management, it's the lack of structure, and it's making them worse. It's making them worse.
I hear you, and there's loads of things at play. And for my take watching the game, I thought we were very good for large parts, for many parts against Ati, but it's more when the pressure increases, we fall apart. The midfield issue, you're absolutely right about. Rashford deserves all the criticism that he's getting right now, and I think this is what's troubled me today. Is the difference between criticism and abuse has become so blurred. It is unbelievable. And, I put out a statistic, over 32,000 times a year, Marcus Rashford is abused. And what people say is, well, criticize him isn't abuse. No. So the organization that conducted this study across social media posts about him, this is at him, not said about him. So if I write Rashford is, that doesn't count in this. This is people that have added him and given him abuse. So if you would add all of them, you're talking loads more. But Marcus Rashford is the most abused football player in the world. 32,000 times a year. The second most abused footballer is Ronaldo with 11,000. The third most abused player is Pogba with around 7,000. So the biggest three in the world are all Man United players, first and foremost. It shows what United have.
Yeah.
But it's fans understand it. My view is this. I've criticized Rashford, some things he's done and things he's said. I don't like the leaks that he's put out to the media. I don't like the way he talks about all the hard work he's doing behind the scenes, but isn't it? For me, it's like, keep your powder dry, keep quiet. I'll criticize him for that. But I also then moved to the stage of, I now need to protect you as a human being at my club. I did the same thing with Marouane Fellaini. Marouane Fellaini was never good enough for me for Man United. I never wanted him at the club. I didn't like what he brought to us. And when there was talking in the early part of the summer of 2018, he was leaving, I celebrated. Did a little video. I remember in my car, where he's leaving. Then he signed the new deal. And I did a video being disappointed. But then I turned into an advocate for him. Because when he re-signed his new deal, people sent him threats, death threats, wished him to get injured, wished that his legs would break in training. Some, and it's only a handful, but some went as far as to say, I hope you get cancer.
Yeah, it's mad.
As soon as I saw that, my view was, I as a Man United fan have now got to stand with you, because that goes beyond. But I remember when I said that, I called out of a United channel, come on guys, we need to come together and support him. Silence. No one wanted to know why. Yeah, but I don't want the people to say these things to not watch my channel anymore. I don't want these people to unfollow me. It's an unpopular opinion to stand shoulder to shoulder with Marouane Fellaini. I'm like, but people are wishing cancer on him, bruv. Like, for me, my opinion of him as a footballer is now doesn't exist. And what Rashford did on video the other day, in that isolated moment, the people weren't saying anything disrespectful, in my opinion, that warranted what he did. But it's the accumulation of everything he goes
100%. Yeah.
That leads to that. And we've all done that, bruv. You've been out on a night out. You're in a mood because work's horrible. You're falling out with the missus. You're not feeling very well. Money problems. And then someone says something completely innocent, and you go off the handle. It isn't that innocent comment that sent you off the. It was that might have been the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
And for me, the way and what I saw yesterday towards Rashford was people go, yes. Been waiting to get at him for something he's done wrong on a morality level forever. And now I get to have a pop at him. But if it was Pogba that snapped yesterday, a lot of these people would say, yeah, but after everything he's taken, it's damn right that he spoke to the fans like that. And by the way, I agree. I actually am happy Rashford did what he did. And I'm annoyed he apologized. I'm annoyed. I'd be annoyed if Pogba snapped and did that. I go back to this. Eric Cantona kicking that fan in the face. He's one of the best things a footballer's ever done. He kicked a racist in the face. He should have slapped you at Selhurst Park for that. For me, if a footballer turns around and swears at a person abusing them, or what Granit Xhaka did when Arsenal fans were sending him DMs saying, I hope your wife gets cancer. Him saying, screw you to anybody booing me, anyone abusing me, I think's right. That's just me, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm out of line. But I feel like, as fans, if you love Man United and you want your players to do the best, you're a Chelsea fan, you want your players to do the best, you have to draw the line when you start teetering into abuse. And the reason I say that is a bigger issue. I think the rise in sexism, homophobia, racism within football, in terms of people saying it, has risen because we've created a breeding ground where it's acceptable to be offensive and highly abusive. We allow highly abusive people to tweet and say things and get. There's a guy that's got an account followed by loads of people that says this account's now dedicated to abusing Rashford and Maguire. You actually read the responses from people, grown men with their kids in their profile picture, going, I'm going to join in and help you, mate. When you create that breeding ground where that type of online bullying and abuse is acceptable and no one's really calling it out, what's the next stage from general abuse? People start to move into the immutables. They feel empowered to abuse, and then their true colors as people come out. And I do feel like there is a line. Of course, sexism, homophobia, racism is worse than calling someone a bad name, in my opinion. However, I think I call it slippery slope time. When you allow certain things, you create a breeding ground for it to get worse and worse. And that's where it ends up. And for me, football fans have got to come together and say, do you know what? You can think Rashford's a bad player, but spreading lies about him, speaking about his mother, is wrong. I've seen fan channels banter him and laugh at things. Like there's laughing and joking about something.
Of course.
There's being nasty and there's being rude and there's being disgusting. And again, if you can't tell a comedian will go up on stage and take the piss out of everybody. They're not being disgusting and nasty. They're having a joke. Like I watched Dave Chappelle's most recent special. He was being funny. Do you know what I mean? So if you're joking, it's fine. But honestly, I feel it's become a very murky world out there where so many people don't feel empowered to just be nasty and abusive all the time.
I think you just said everything quite eloquently, to be honest. I mean, there's no one's held to accountability. I think, and it's actually quite hard to. How do you hold a fan base to accountability? I feel like it's been this kind of growing toxicity. Like, is it also fueled too by like how these algorithms these days, the social media, are just creating like these like online bubbles for people where the news you get fed, the information you see, the tweets you see are very specialized and catered towards you. And I feel like that kind of encourages more of like a hostile type of me against the world reaction that you see from like how a lot of people like, have energy on their tweets. And I don't know, like sometimes I think to myself, like we have such an amazing tool and platform with social media where it actually allows us to actually engage and be connected more to the players than ever before. And I feel like positivity actually can really help your team out more. Like I'll always remember a time when like Hudson-Odoi and Loftus-Cheek under Sarri was starting to get like a lot of praise and excitement from the fan base. I've seen I remember there being a ton of love, ton of tweets, ton of like comps around both these players. And for me, was any surprise that it's like some of their best form I've seen individually? No, because when you're seeing that support for your craft and what you're doing, and obviously the love from the fans as well, that's only going to make you confident when you step out on that field and to do your very best. And I feel like that's something that's being missed, because a lot of times when there's like anger directed towards players who haven't played well, and these guys will know themselves they haven't, I feel a lot of that anger is also mitigated because these guys aren't even being used properly to begin with. Like most times, man, no one complains about players who are in a structure and a system was set up. Most times people are complaining when none of those things exist and the players are just left to fend for themselves. And I mean, you just can't play football when you're just kind of making up on the spot and forcing things. It just don't work like that. So it's a shame. Yeah,
I hear it, and this is again my piece of confirmation bias. If it were in the last few today, we're talking about Rashford. People have DM'd me again. Yeah, but you had to go at Rashford for like doing this and doing that. I went yes, because I've said criticism's okay. He's saying don't abuse Rashford. Their response is, but you said this about him. And then someone went, yeah, but that leads to people abusing Rashford. I'm like, so again, you're missing the point. Me criticizing Rashford, if someone watches my video and then tweets Rashford calling him like a nasty blah, 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 bleep, 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 that's not on me. That's on the person doing it. And again, social media creates this weird thing where me and you can get into a Twitter beef. I can be nasty to you, and then you're nasty to me. But then if my followers start having a go at you, it's like, well, I didn't tell them to. If your followers go, unless I go out and go, listen, all football terrorist followers go and abuse NiiNii, it isn't on me. We've created this weird world where it is, and I'm like, no, there's a difference between criticism and abuse. And if I criticize Rashford and in the comments people are abusing him, I'll condemn them for it. And I've had people go, but you didn't like what Rashford did. I'm like, yes, but I'm not abusing him. And
why is that fine line so blurry? Because I think for me, there's like such a clear distinction between criticism and abuse. So criticism is saying, like you never see like constructive criticism of a player's game, like the way like maybe Rashford's like his dribbling technique, he needs to work on this, or the way he's like striking the ball, or the way he's like running on the field. You know what I mean? Like these are elements of his game that I personally feel could be issues or reasons behind why he's underperforming. I'm going to focus on these issues, and that's going to be my criticism. And then it stays at that. It stays at that. But then once you make it more personal, once like the deficiencies of a player is down to like personal things, like I don't know, like how they live their lives, social media stuff, whatever. Then I feel like then it just goes. It's just irredeemable, in my opinion. And I don't know, I can't help but feel sometimes a lot of the anger is even quicker now, just due to the disparity in which, like, players are on so much more money than they've ever been ever in football history.
Yeah.
And the fans, I mean, fans are really getting priced out of the game quite a lot now. You know, if you want to even take your family to see a game, you're paying hundreds.
Wow.
I mean, I tried to apply for World Cup tickets even. My application got turned down, and I was thinking to myself, is it even worth spending all these grand to even go there? It wasn't like this when I went to Germany for the World Cups or other international tournaments. And I guess it's just like this growing frustration of like the fan feeling like they're not getting their money's worth, their value, especially when they're under so much financial stress and pressure as it is already. And I feel like the game's just become too greedy. It's become too money obsessed. It's become overinflated, where I feel like a lot of these guys going for big transfer fees shouldn't even be nowhere near that value at all. But it's all these rich guys buying clubs that's pumping the value up more and more and more. And you create this because the common guy that was just literally, you know, you got to save like crazy to support your team. It's a big financial sacrifice you're making. I can kind of understand why the frustration comes out so much more now, to be honest.
No, I hear you on that. I do. NiiNii, absolute pleasure having you on the terrace, mate. It's been far too long. A few people saying it's the first time. It wasn't the first time, but it was years back that you were on here, mate.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate it a lot. To all the viewers and all of the super chatters, thank you very, very much indeed. You know how much we appreciate it on the show. Until next time, everybody, take care of yourselves. Goodbye. God bless.